Same old price. Remember? Yep. There is no inflation in here.
Thank you very much.
But the only difference is my eyesight is not as good.
I really enjoyed the Chinatown Auxiliary film. I liked that they showed a lot of moments from everyday life, just casual moments, casual conversations between officers and members of the community there. I liked that they talked to a lot of different members of the community, and we got to hear from a lot of people's stories. A lot of them were, similar. A lot of them were very different, and just being able to hear from all these different types of people in this community was really cool. This film also made great use of old photos and documents just to help visualize these stories as they were telling them. So I thought that was done really well. And sort of the shift in this film to highlight the horrible discrimination that the Asian community has faced after the COVID outbreak, and especially in 2020, 2021, just the horrible discrimination and hate crimes that they're experiencing, and how much they've had to sort of up their patrols in the area just to show uniforms and show that they're there, was really disheartening to see how, just like the horrible discrimination just on innocent civilians because of the way they look, because of lies that are being told in the media, was really awful to see. And that shift in the film, you could really feel that. But I also enjoyed that we shifted back to just seeing the pride that these people have for their community, their pride in being New Yorkers and being able to protect their community, labeling themselves as American Chinese New Yorkers and having pride in that. And so that was a great ending to this film, to see them coming together and being honored for their service to their community. I thought that was really cool, and I really enjoyed this film.
Stop Asian Hate. This follows the Chinese Americans who are protecting the streets of Chinatown in New York City after Trump calls COVID, the Chinese virus. A rise in hate crimes occurred in this particular part of the nation, and they dive into the after effects of these words. And we follow a group of individuals where some have had up to 50 years of service, and we see them work together to create a safe environment for their people. As there are a rise in crimes in the Chinese elderly, bringing some of those to an untimely death, unfortunately. And it's a very important conversational piece and a primary example, zoning into the exact environment where these attacks are happening at its core. I think it's very important to share these stories so that people are fully aware of what's happening with our world so we can take action to change it.
Chinatown Auxiliary really showed a really important story. All these people trying to protect people who are like them, and I think it's a really good story because especially modern issues and even issues back when they first came here. It's really good to see people supporting each other, and I think this really shows these people in this community, like New York Chinatown, like really well.
This film is called Chinatown Auxiliary. This was an inspiring film. It introduces us to the story of many Chinese immigrants to the U.S., notably men and women who are members of the Chinatown Auxiliary in New York City. Lots of fascinating photos of different people coming from China to the U.S. for a better, safer life. Sadly, there have been lots of criminal acts against the Chinese immigrant community, and thus the Chinatown Auxiliary in New York City came to be. Love the camera work in this film. Lots of close-ups of uniforms, faces, locations, and items. I enjoyed the scenes of camaraderie and police instruction and the awards ceremony for many years of service. Great film.
Hey, today I'm commenting on the documentary short Chinatown Auxiliary. I thought that this was a really impressive blending of personal history with sort of the history of a community and sort of how that community integrated itself and protected itself. Really, really cool to see just the way that people in Chinatown kind of took it upon themselves to not only, watch out for themselves when they didn't have the resources to seek, official help, but also just sort of the cyclical nature of the issues and dangers that the community faces, and how, how anti-Asian prejudice is not a thing that has gone away over time. It's just, something that's kind of, hasn't even really changed in a sense. So it was just, I thought, really fascinating to see just this blend of the way that the historical feels personal, and how your subjects, became a part of this auxiliary for personal reasons, but also community reasons. It just made for a really fascinating way of telling their story. And by the way, the decision to leave out any narration for the first part was fantastic. I was absolutely riveted for the first few minutes of the documentary. I understand why you brought in narration afterwards, but those first few minutes were absolutely electric.
Chinatown, this documentary chronicles the lives of Chinese people living and working in Chinatown, and it talks about so many different factors of their existence. One in particular that stood out to me was how barriers in language prevented them from being able to report on various crimes when it came to robberies and gang violence. And they felt like the police in that community didn't act appropriately because it was more so whoever had the capacity to speak English would have the upper hand. So you kind of got to see how certain people got into being policemen because of things like that, and wanting to feel like there was a representative that could actually speak for the people in this neighborhood. And you get to see various sides of people who came from China. They talk about this beautiful couple that came and fell in love and moved here, and you get to see different immigrants that came and decided to make this their permanent home and build careers, and how they deal with feeling like they left their homeland for this new opportunity. And in some cases, people will look at them as traitors for leaving. Yeah. But at the same time, most of them agree that they don't feel like returning is something they would do even after they retire, because it's essentially does become the new home. But then something else very interesting came up in this, is because most of them mentioned why they left China in the first place was to feel like they're getting away from places where they could be at war, because they thought this would be a place that they would never be at war. And little did they know that they would still need to deal with the war against a war with Asian hate in America brought on by COVID. And it just shows how this Asian fear drastically affected businesses in Korea, in Chinatown. It drastically affected how people viewed Asian people. And it drastically affected how the police force had to handle this particular area. And so it was just very interesting because, like I said, you hear about these theories in hindsight, Asian hate and things like that. You hear about things in the news, but it's very different when you see it from the point of view of the person who was affecting.